Tell, sorry, is son or daughter in your Skype picture?
Maybe my son.
Yeah. Is it an old picture?
It's an older one.
My Skype picture is probably 10 years old.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the 86th episode of the Korea podcast. I'm your host Jack, located here in Ulsan, South Korea. Today is the 19th of October, I believe, and it's actually kind of a chilly day. The Korea podcast deals with anything and everything to do with living and working in South Korea. For the most part, we were talking about hagwons, how to start one, as well as gombobangs. But today, I've got a special guest, and today we're going to talk about farming. Ryan Phillips is here with me today. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Jack.
Welcome to the PODAST podcast, however you spell that thing. And Ryan is an experienced farmer. He's been at it for quite some time in South Korea, and so we're going to bombard him with a bunch of questions because during the last podcast, which was last week, in which I talked about an abbreviated version of the modern history of South Korea, and one of our viewers posted a bunch of questions. So I would like to ask those, and I'm very glad that you agreed to come on, Ryan, and do this, because
Sure, my pleasure.
right on. But before we get to those questions, I did attach a short bio of your. Actually, let me just check to make sure that there's sound, man, because the last thing we want is a silent audio. And no
Before
sound.
we get to those questions.
Oh yeah, okay. It's all good, I think.
I did attach a short bio of your. Actually, let me just check to make sure that there's sound.
Okay.
The last thing we want is
I hear myself.
silent.
You're the important person
silent
here. I'm just
audio.
secondary.
Before we get to those questions.
Okay. Good. We're good. Okay. So I posted a short bio underneath the video, which Ryan kindly sent to me, and maybe instead of me reading it, talking about it, how long have you been in Korea, Ryan?
Next month it'll make 14 years, man.
14 years. And yeah, that's a long time. So that would have been 2006.
That's right. And, you know, I was doing some work for the U.S. Embassy earlier this year. And so I had to do a lot of paperwork, you know, for security, of course, to be at the embassy, you know, 5 days a week. And I guess I had lied to myself over the years. Somehow I thought I got here in 2007, but when I had to fill out all these documents, I found that no, I arrived in November of 2006 and pretty much been here ever since.
Nice. So I arrived in 2005, so only a year before that, and clearly our paths have been very, very different. I assume our experiences here in South Korea have also been very different. What prompted you, I guess, to come to South Korea in the first place?
Well, first and foremost, my father was adopted from South Korea. When he was 3 years old. He went to the States, and that's all he really knew. He has no family connections here or anything like that. But there was always a little bit of a curiosity growing up. I'd already lived in some other countries. Like I was an exchange student in Brazil when I was a kid. I lived in Mexico before I moved here. So I wasn't afraid to, you know, go off and live in another country by any means. And I thought Korea would be a new adventure, you know.
Right.
And another friend was coming, and a couple other friends were here, and then I got here, and I wound up getting a gig at a college here in the culinary program, and then 5.5 months of paid vacation. How could I ever leave? So,
Right.
and then Korea's just been really good to me over the years. Things have just gotten better and better every year. Yeah.
So, was your initial reason for being here farming, or is that something you kind of fell into?
That was after getting in at the Ulsan Science College in the culinary department there.
Mm-hmm.
I quickly learned that it was hard. It was hard to, I asked for fresh herbs,
Mm-hmm.
and things like jalapenos or just something as simple as cilantro.
Right.
But back then, it was really hard to find here. Something like cilantro or fresh herbs cost a fortune. I remember 3 or 4 sage leaves was $3 or 3,000 won.
Wow.
And so when you're trying to teach a class, you've got a big lab class, it's a beautiful facility, and you want to teach basics of, say, making stock,
Right.
for first semester students, and they're never going to learn the proper flavor, if they're using half a sprig at a time, and it was just kind of ridiculous. So we thought, let's start a garden club,
Right.
and make a container garden, outside the building there. And we tried, and we actually failed miserably. Summer vacation, everybody ran off. And I, at that point in time, I lived about 30 minutes from campus.
Mm-hmm.
So, nobody was watering these things enough. And in containers, you got to water a ton every day.
Right.
Unless you're lucky enough to have plenty of rain. But still, even though we failed so miserably that first attempt, myself and a really good friend, Ash Looper, we got the bug and just kept going with it, and met other folks and learned more. I never was a farmer in Texas, where I grew up mostly. My parents or our family, we'd have like a backyard garden, but I wasn't really into it.
Mm-hmm.
But for the love of ingredients and flavors, that prompted me to invest time and energy, I moved into this apartment 8 years ago because the rooftop. Rooftop's all mine. It's a great, huge space for container gardening. And I would say about 6 years ago, on the second or third year trying up there,
Mm-hmm.
we really figured it out. I mean, if anybody out there wants to do container gardening, I don't know how much you want to get into it tonight, but folks are welcome to message me. There are some really cool tricks.
What is container gardening? Maybe is that? I can imagine gardening inside a container. That's what I'm.
That's all. It's
Okay.
not some special terminology or anything. It's just. I used to go look for cheap containers of any kind that would
Mm-hmm.
last, that would hold up. But then we learned about submersible watering. So, simple explanation. What we found is if you take like a great big water jug,
Mm-hmm.
the big like water tank water jugs,
Yeah.
and you cut the top off at the first part where it gets wider. Okay, so it has the top, and then it goes out right below the first inch or so where it gets wider. Cut it off there. Take
Right.
that, turn it upside down, and stuff it inside of the jug. All right.
Uh-huh.
You can have a water reservoir in the bottom and your soil in the top. And so the plant always has water.
Right. Okay.
You with me? And basically, it's amazing how well things grow that way.
Mm.
They don't have to make a taproot, like something like a pepper plant doesn't have to make a taproot because it always has water. So it can use that energy in another way. Then there's another really useful thing called air pruning. And in Korea, everybody eats a lot of kimchi.
Yeah.
So there's these cabbage bags that you buy cabbages in the market. They come with 3 cabbages in one of these bags. And so it's a really readily available resource here that costs almost nothing. If you go to a market, you could probably get them for free around here because they're throwing them out.
Right.
And we found if you double those mesh bags up, it's just like the bag you get your onions in, or maybe, onions mostly. Anywhere in the States, too, I've always seen them that way. That mesh bag, right? So if you put 2 of those together, the soil doesn't fall out too easy. If it's just one, soil falls out. But if you got 2, works really well. And, you've got to figure out your soil mixes depending on what you have available to you. But that same amount of soil, say if it was in a pot, like a plastic pot, versus in this bag, you can pretty much quadruple the amount of plant that you're growing in it, just because it's in the bag and it's not in the container.
Is there more airflow, or what's the reason for that?
I'll tell you, it's imagine a root underground hitting a rock. It's going to look for a way around that rock.
Right.
All right. But a root underground that hits, say, the edge of a cliff, hits air. It's not going to look for a way around that cliff. Right. I guess it didn't evolve to need to do that. So what it sends a message to the plant to do is to use what it has rather than try to spread so much. So we would have 3 or 4 peaches and cream sweet corn in one of these bags, or one of these double bags, which only held maybe 2.5 cubic feet of soil. Yeah, I'd say about 2 to 2.5 cubic feet. All right. So you could have 3 giant peaches and cream, non-GMO organic sweet corn growing in there. And then on top of that, we would get 3 giant ears per stalk.
Okay.
All right. And then you take those bags, and rather than just putting them on the ground or on the rooftop, we just found like children's swimming pools for about $12, right? Like an 8-foot diameter little swimming pool. And then you put those bags in there. They shouldn't be touching, because then it's not air pruning anymore. You got to put like an inch apart between them. But then you always keep a couple of inches of water in there, right? And now you've got the submersible watering as well. So they don't need any kind of taproot, which corn doesn't do anyway, but peppers in there, So in half of that 8-foot diameter pool, no kidding, man, we got over 200 ears of peaches and cream sweet corn.
Sounds like a lot, man.
Yeah, it's something. It's something, man. In the other half, we had scotch bonnets and habaneros, and ridiculous, beautiful yield on that too. That year, the rooftop really turned into an oasis. We were finding praying mantis and frogs and lizards all the way up. I mean, I'm on the 3rd floor. The roof is above me, and birds and all this wildlife came to the rooftop. My heating bills that summer were a whole lot cheaper too, because of all that thermal mass up there.
Right.
And then the water. It was also really easy to water because you don't have to go around with a jug and hit each plant. You just dump a bucket of water in that pool.
Right.
And by the later that year, I think we had 4 of the pools going up there at once, and some other setups. And it works so well for almost everything. Not everything do you want to plant that way. Okra did not do well that way. It wouldn't produce fruit. It just kept growing really big. Tomatoes, you wouldn't want to do that way because they would explode. They would have so much water that they would burst. So you wouldn't want to do that way. But most things work incredibly well that way.
Wow. And so you've been at it for farming now for 13 years? Is that what you said?
Oh, probably really into it just for maybe nine
Right.
years, I guess. So yeah.
But so you've expanded away from the rooftop and you've got your own farm now, right?
I don't even have time to do the rooftop anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I don't. Yeah.
proper farming, right? Which is something I think it's not very commonly done by expats here, right? So you're in a very unique position to lecture the rest of us on what it's like, farming. And so in the last podcast, one of the viewers left a bunch of questions, like I mentioned. And so how about I ask them of you now? Because they're specific to South Korea. And so, you probably would be one of the best sources to ask since you've been farming in Korea for nearly 9 years, right? As you said.
I'll do my best.
Alrighty. So the first one is, I guess, could you make a brief comment about Korean agriculture? I guess kind of just a general comment on agriculture in South Korea.
Okay, how about one pro and one con?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. A pro. There are no giant farms here.
Okay.
It's apparently it's illegal. It's not allowed for any one company to have control over a huge amount of land for agriculture. So the little guy doesn't get pushed out.
Okay.
I think that's pretty amazing. For as modern as Korea is, to have kept something from the heritage of being farmers, and protecting farmers. I think that's really cool. Lots and lots of small farms that leads to a lot of cooperation. And even like your local government for farmers will have like a community center with farm equipment and tools that you can rent or borrow very, very cheaply or possibly free if you have a registered farm.
Okay.
That's amazing to me. Even seed and compost and all these materials are given to you or sold to you at a very low price to support farming or farmers here in Korea.
Right.
I guess a con would be all my farming neighbors laugh at me for being organic. They think I'm ridiculous for not using herbicide and pesticide and petroleum-based fertilizers.
Okay.
And that is because I imagine, my theory is that when those things became available here, they just became so widespread. And, it is a really homogenous culture here. And so everybody kind of does the same stuff. And if you do something different, it's often considered wrong.
Sure.
And I think that's going to take a long time to change. I mean, if people want to change it, it's just when I got to my land that we've had for 4 years now for Barefoot Gardens, it was a sandbox. There was no life in that soil whatsoever. But if you're using petroleum-based fertilizer, and herbicide and pesticide, That's to be expected. You
Right.
don't, with that fertilizer, you don't need to have life in the soil.
Mm.
It's not, the plants do great. You don't need, and then if it's sandy in rainy season here, which goodness gracious, this year was ridiculous, but it can happen any year, and be almost as heavy as this year. Um, and then the sand helps for your drainage, so you don't flood other things. You
Mm.
know, um, so they kind of like the sand. Yeah, so that's my pro and my con.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a CMD in the chat, and you basically answered a couple more of those questions. One was on how is agriculture viewed in South Korea? Is it mostly small farmers or big corporations? You answered that question, and I guess you partially did answer the question on pesticide and growing hormones. Growing hormones use. So from what you just said, I gather that most farmers do use pesticides and growth hormones of some sort, fertilizer,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah, all the folks around me do, and I can't speak for everybody. I do know Korean organic farmers as well.
mhm,
I've been participating in the farmers market for 7 or 8 years now, the
mhm,
Seoul Marché, and all the farmers there are chemical free or organic. And there's sections of supermarkets that are all chemical free or totally organic.
mm,
So they're definitely out there.
right.
But I think for the most part, it's these old guys around me. They were just on the farm with me today. They
Mm.
were laughing at me. They were like, Yugi Nong, yeah, and yeah, because I've got grass growing everywhere,
Mm.
and and they'll look at me funny and like, what are you doing? But we have seen now every single shovel. It took 3 years. Last year we really saw the turn.
Mm.
Um, this is worth saying. Okay, first year sandbox. We threw $1,000 of compost into
Mm.
the 520 Pyong farm,
Mm.
which is like a third of an acre, I think, or a little
Mm.
less than a third of an acre. Um, had a tractor come out, till it all into the soil so we could, get some nutrients in there.
Mhm.
But that first year was tough.
Right.
We never found any worms in the soil anywhere.
Mm.
Um, of course, the water drained away or evaporated really quickly because there's no, life in this soil. There's
Right.
no diversity. So we're watering like crazy. Um, Second year, a little better, but still the aphids and let's see, what are the other major? Well, always butterflies, caterpillars, but aphids mainly. Aphids love pepper plants and a
Mm.
lot of other plants. They'll eat around the flowers, and the pepper plant just won't grow. They steal all the chlorophyll.
Right.
Um, but in the third year, last year, we had started to see all these predator insects come in, like praying mantis,
Mm.
ladybugs, all these different things that were now balancing back out the natural ecosystem.
Right.
And suddenly we didn't have to fight the aphids anymore.
Mm.
Uh, it was amazing. And this year it's been the same. We're like an oasis of all things natural, surrounded by all these other little farms, or the city itself. We're not really rural where I am,
Right.
but we're like a little oasis of all things natural. Yeah, and it's worked well for us.
Nice.
Finally.
Nice. I think it's kind of a lost art, so to speak, man. Farming and like being self-sufficient. I think most of us don't really know, how to grow properly. I mean, I could take a seed and plant it and hope for the best, but have a lot of knowledge on how to do best and how to turn a sandbox into a fertile soil, man. That's a lost art for most of us, I think.
Man, well, half of it for us, we probably could have read and watched a lot of YouTube videos and done a
Sure.
lot of research, but we've had fun just with trial and error.
Mm,
That's how we figured out the rooftop, and that's how we've been figuring out the Barefoot Gardens, the farm out there.
right.
Yeah, yeah. It's and then no matter how much you plan, you're still not in control,
Mm.
you know. One kind of scary thing that it's been on my mind a lot this year is in the 4 years that we've been on this land, we've seen in just 4 years, we've seen two extreme weather years.
Right.
2 years ago was the hottest, driest
Mm.
ever recorded in Korea, ever. And this year, the wettest in how long? I've heard different stories.
I heard
but
20 years, I heard 7 years, but all I know is it rained a lot this year. Like it just almost, yeah. It was a lot
well, that hot, dry year, it didn't affect us that much because we have groundwater pumps and it's all irrigated. I run water fly lines and so we had a huge yield, like close to a metric ton of peppers, right? This year, maybe 5% of that.
Not really.
The pepper plants, it was just too cloudy, and just so much rain.
I planted a few sunflowers out, and they rotted away. I was like, "What? What's it going? What the heck's happening?"
Fungus.
Yeah, it was
Fungus.
shocking. Just too much water. In the chat, the CMD is asking, is South Korea self-sufficient with food in case of a war or no possibility to import products from abroad?
I don't think so.
No. I know.
I'm pretty sure more than half of the rice is imported now.
Yeah.
I think I heard that. But I'm not an expert on that, so you have to check better sources. But I have heard years ago even that it went over half of the rice was now being imported.
Also, you say you're organic. Are your yields similar to conventional ones? Also, is there any group which gathers organic farmers in Korea? 2 questions in one thingy.
There's definitely groups that gather organic farmers in Korea, like the farmers market. Right. But then for them to supply the supermarkets that have the organic sections, they'll have to pull from multiple farmers because every farm is small. So it's the only way to do it. There's a lot of cooperation, a lot of co-ops here in Korea when it comes to agriculture.
Right.
What was the first part of that question?
The yields from your organic, are they similar to conventional ones, the conventional yields?
Conventional being petroleum fertilizer?
Yeah, I guess using fertilizer in the traditional method of farming in Korea.
Well, I can't give a really simple answer to that because, there's different varieties of plants that are grown for different reasons. You're either going to grow something that is for profit or you're going to grow something that's for flavor.
Right.
Those two lines on the graph probably cross somewhere, or meet somewhere. But, I can go to the market here and I can buy a case of carrots, 10 kilos of carrots, and they're huge, and they're maybe from Vietnam or China at $9 to $11 for 10 kilos of carrots. Giant suckers.
From China,
Yeah, and then the domestic ones are only maybe 30 or 40% more, most of the year anyway. But we grow carrots, this variety, it's called a Durant carrot. and we don't try to grow them huge, but they taste so good. You know, they're sweet, full of flavor. Even the fronds or the tops, you know, flavor stock really well. Um, we also grow purples and yellows, um, and whites, because of the flavor contrasts. And um, that is a totally different thing. You don't see them in markets a lot because it's not as profitable. You know,
Right.
you got to grow a lot more to fill that 10-kilo box, and more carrots means, you know, more harvesting. You know, and processing, and it's just a totally different animal. Um, the old farmers were laughing at my cabbage growing today because it's probably not going to be big enough in time for
Right.
kimjang, for kimchi making season, around the middle of November to late November. It probably won't get a chance to get so big. And I was asking them for tips, and all they could say was like, you know, put some fertilizer on it. We do make fertilizer, and it helps a lot.
Right.
Uh, it's really cool. You can go to any fish market here in Korea, and it's kind of gross, but you can get discarded fish. Um, and if you chop that up and throw some lactobacillus, which is really easy to make, safe bacteria that exists in all of our stomachs, you can use that with that fish, and let it kind of process that fish for about a month. And for a while it stinks, but towards the end it just kind of smells a little bit like vinegar. And you have an amazing organic fertilizer that doesn't cost you hardly anything at all.
Right.
Yeah.
See, there you go. Put that in your notes, whoever's farming.
Yeah.
What is a Demeter biodynamic? Are you familiar with that terminology?
I'm not sure. Can you say it one more time?
It's Demeter. I don't know if I pronounce it properly. Demeter biodynamic.
Biodynamic.
Yeah, it's Demeter
Sounds.
/ biodynamic.
Boy, I wish you would have sent me that question earlier. I could have looked
This
it
is
up.
just posted in the chat right now by CMD.
Okay.
Same view right now. So okay, skip. We don't know.
I'd love a little clarification on that, because I'm curious. Biodynamic sounds like maybe biodiverse.
All right. So CMD, if you could post a clarification to that question, that would help out. The next one is, what is the average size of a farm? You say it's small, more like 5 hectare or 30 hectares. What is considered small in Korea?
Oh gosh, what's the limit? Oh man, I can't remember exactly. But I go for morning runs around the farms, and there's not a single one that's bigger than really like an acre or two, you know? Because they're all divided up. You can see them all harvesting rice right now. It's beautiful. It was beautiful in the morning. It's just golden. You know, rice turns really gold this time of year, and everybody's out harvesting either by hand or with machinery. Small machinery. None of that giant stuff you'd see in the American Midwest or West. Yeah, none of those are bigger than maybe a couple of acres.
Okay.
Yeah.
So biodynamic is like organic, but more hardcore, I guess. That's what the explanation is. And Demeter, Jesus, is a group that certifies biodynamic farms. So.
Okay.
If you heard of that here, is it present in South Korea?
Not that I know of, but man, Korea's got everything. I'm sure somebody's doing it.
Right.
There's a lot more chemical free. I see a lot more chemical free than straight up organic though too. Yeah, which I think that means actually no herbicides and pesticides, but they're still using fertilizers. So yeah, they're not using chemicals to kill insects or plants, but they're still using nitrogen fertilizers.
Okay.
Yeah.
CMD says that what is Demeter is popular in Germany. Example in Demeter, you use the moon calendar, maybe not extremely, but pretty big in Germany. It has more restrictions. So it's just another way of farming organically in some way, I guess. Yeah.
No, it sounds. I'll have to look into it. Sounds interesting. Definitely use the moon calendar around here.
Yeah, right.
For
It's
life
pretty
in general.
common. Right.
Yeah, it works too, man. The harvest time. It's
Going back to some of the questions from last week. Growing hormones. The person said that once I saw an article about chicken overgrowing cause of overuse of example growing hormones in South Korea. Are people concerned about impact of those substances on a body? So I don't know. I've seen videos, and I know that, like in Canada, for example, I don't know in Canada, but what is it? Battery farming. They basically poison the chickens and stuff them full of seeds or whatever to make them grow very quickly. And the time span between of like a chicken hatching and actually being on a shelf is like something stupid, like 2 to 3 weeks. It's ridiculous. I remember. But I don't know what it's like in Korea when it comes to chicken farming. What's the story with that?
I feel like it's better here than a lot of places, but I don't know for sure. The chickens you buy here are not huge.
It's true.
You must know that.
Yeah.
You can find larger chickens, but it's really not common. So I like to think they're not pumping them full of hormones quite as much, but yeah, I can't really say definitively either way. I can tell you that as a chef, I love being able to go and buy poultry that died that morning, that was slaughtered in the last 24 hours. The fresh chicken here and duck as well, and the prices on it are just amazing, really. I bought a duck back in Colorado earlier this year. Yeah, back in January, I guess, or February. And I think I paid $80 for this frozen duck.
Wow.
And I can go to the market here, my poultry guy, about 15 minutes from here, and I might pay just $8 for a whole fresh duck.
Right.
Yeah. And a chicken, about 1.2 kilo chickens, only about $4.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, chicken's not too expensive if you buy it in a store.
From the poultry guys, it's great, because you go to the supermarket, it might be a different story. And then it's another day or two older too. So I just don't do that. Just go to my poultry guy.
What is people's stand on supporting local farmers? From my personal experience, I think most Hanaromart is kind of like a conglomerate, right, of local farmers where local farmers bring their produce and put it out on display. And I think most people, especially now after COVID, there's I know Ulsan has this Ulsan Pay, and I think people are very keen on supporting like local produce, local farmers rather than imported stuff. But what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, shoot, Korea's not really that big. Everything's fairly local. I love it. There have been times when I was working with another chef friend and we go to the butcher shop and I'm like, oh, let's get that cheap pork from the States or from Germany. And he'd look at me and be like, let's buy the Korean. And I'm like, and I look back over at him and I'm like, okay, let's do it. And man, I guess I'm lucky. I can eat off the farm this time of year, 3 meals a day,
Mm.
7 days a week, and be full just from what the farm provides.
Right.
Um, and in the 7 or 8 years of participating with the farmers market in Seoul, I've seen it at least quadruple in size.
Mm.
Yeah, at least quadruple in size, with vendors and attendants. Um, and they've started doing even weekday smaller farmers markets around the city too, this year. And so definitely, yeah, there's been a shift, along with a shift towards vegan and vegetarian here. I did, when I first came here, you could not find a vegetarian option anywhere,
Yeah.
and now there's a whole bunch of folks, especially younger folks, I think, that are really into vegetarian or vegan.
Yeah, it's true. Uh,
Mm.
2005 when I came here, like a year before you did, and from then on for longest time, anybody who was coming, I had a friend who was vegetarian, and she herself said it was really difficult to travel throughout Korea because everything had meat in it. If it's
Yeah,
jjigae, soup, or whatever, there's always like some kind of meat base. So it was
yeah,
very difficult. But these days, you've got stores that cater to vegetarians exclusively.
sure enough.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I should have known because the farmers market is kind of a crystal ball on these
Mm.
things and show you the future. And back about 6 years ago, there was somebody doing veggie burgers, and there's this long line, people waiting an hour for a veggie burger. I was like,
Yeah.
what? And then sure enough, some restaurants started popping up, and then I have folks asking me if my hot sauce has honey in it because they're vegan and they
Mm.
didn't eat honey, and I had to do a double take. I was like, oh, no, this one doesn't have honey in it. No, okay. And yeah, it's been, things just shift here so quickly, um, in large numbers. It's
Mm.
it's amazing. It's really amazing place.
Uh, CMD is like bombarding us here with questions. Speaking of the farms, I don't know where you're located exactly. Where are you located in Korea?
I'm just 45 minutes south of Seoul.
All
So
right.
Suwon, technically the farm is in Hwasong City,
Mm.
um, but it's right on the edge with Yongin and Suwon.
All right. Like from my experience here, one of the things that I really enjoyed coming when I first came to Korea were the 5-day markets, and those were mainly, I think, by the local farmers just bringing in, their trucks and spilling them all over the street. And those have
Yeah.
disappeared, or they've moved into like the more manicured markets, I guess.
Really? Oh, that's a bummer. I was just at a 5 day market not too long ago
Mm.
over on the East Coast
Mm.
in near Gangneung and Yangyang. Um, and that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe just, I don't know, maybe regionally, depends on where you are. Maybe if you're located closer to a lot more farmland, it might, these 5-day markets may
Sure.
still more occur more frequently.
Yeah.
Um, CMD is asking a question. You posted, I think you included something about in your introduction
Hmm.
about how farming is viewed in South Korea, and CMD right now in the comments section posted a question. What kind of view has regular South Korean has enough farm? Okay, I guess how do regular Koreans view farming or farmers, and are they considered as people that are not that smart?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well,
Is that,
okay. I guess one thing, Jack, I'm sure you know that different generations here,
hmm.
like 10-year, say people in their 20s, people in their 30s, there can be very different,
Hmm.
even kind of culturally.
Sure.
Um, and so I think older folks, God, it's hard for me to speak on this. I can't generalize too much,
Sure.
but okay, yes, to answer your question, yes, of course there is some of that still here.
Hmm.
You know, if you have darker skin,
Right.
then you might be poor. You might be a farmer.
Right.
But all that just goes back to, you know, if you lived in the city and you worked in an office, then you had white skin because you weren't out in the sun all day.
Hmm.
And back in the States, we shifted that, you know, in the 50s and 60s, because then it meant you had vacation time or you had time to play tennis and golf or sunbathe. That meant you had a tan. So then you were richer than those who were white who were stuck in the office. So, you know, but ah, I think you'll find a lot of younger folks here that have a tremendous amount of respect for farmers, but you might find others that are afraid of bugs and never want to go outside of a sterilized apartment.
Hmm.
So, you know, you get a big mix, just like anywhere else, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting here. Cost of organic products, is it higher or more expensive? Like back home, I think organic tends to be a little bit more expensive. In Korea, I don't know, to be honest. I never really pay attention.
Definitely a good 20 to 80% more
Yeah.
money for the organic stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I've picked up organic lemons from Jeju,
Hmm.
and they were easily twice as much. But way better.
Right.
They didn't have that wax all over them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things it's hard to grow organic, man. It is not it is
Yeah,
not easy.
sure.
I mean, keeping caterpillars off with organic insecticide, good
Hmm.
luck. Good luck. You got to just go around and just pull them off by hand. Yeah.
I think there was an earlier question of like, have you heard of any programs like organic programs on farming being offered at the local universities or colleges here?
Well, I know that nutritionalists has seen a spike recently. A lot more new students choosing to study to become nutritionalists.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to dodge your question. I think that kind of
No.
just relates or shows that there is maybe a movement towards knowing more about what you're consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I have not had a fast food. Fast food makes me feel weird.
Yeah.
You know,
I bet.
it.
I know. I can't say that I don't eat fast food. I try to avoid it. Like occasionally, I'll have some ramen and stuff, but I try to live
Yeah,
as healthy as I possibly can, which is not very often, I guess. But I steer clear of stuff like McDonald's, for example. And I've been off of McDonald's for several years, and my last encounter with it again was a couple of years ago. And brother, man, that stuff makes me go, man. I have a Big Mac and a Coke. Remember last time? 30 minutes later, I was in the bathroom, and it was just a horrendous experience. So,
this makes me.
yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't. I don't know. Somehow it steals my energy. If I'm eating, things off the farm with some meat, and maybe stay away from white bread or
Mm-hmm.
pasta. Yeah, I just feel great. I got energy all the time.
Mm.
But as soon as you go and get a bunch of processed stuff, I don't know. Maybe it's psychosomatic. I don't know.
No, I don't. I don't think so. I
But
think I agree. Like there was maybe last year I was going to the gym. There was a gym right behind me, and I finally managed to scrounge up some time and energy. And I went to the gym on a regular basis, and I would go early in the morning. Then I would head home and have a massive salad with like just greens and avocado and a little bit of like two different kinds of cheese sliced up and two slices of bread with some butter on it. And that stuff would like get me going through the day. I would get home in
right,
the evening and be surprised that I wasn't as hungry as I would have expected to be, after a whole day of teaching and like, being active in classes. So yeah,
yeah.
totally, man.
And it seems like you got to train your body to get used to that kind of
Yeah.
energy or processing it that way. But once you get over the hump and your body's used to making energy from healthier foods, you don't even crave that other stuff ever,
Yeah. And I found out even
Mm.
more recently, excessive amount of meat. Like if I do go out to a restaurant and have, bulgogi or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
my body responds in a weird way. Like there's excess gases being produced that is just unpleasant, to live with. So, so like occasionally I do want to even steer away from meat in restaurants and stuff, because I don't think that's very healthy either, man. It just feels like my
Yeah.
body is almost kind of beginning to reject it after years of abuse, man. It's starting to go.
I, I I have this. You know that Korea has the highest per capita rate of stomach and colon cancers.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
heard something of that.
yeah, and I have this theory that I would love somebody to do research on
Mm,
and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Um, until until 20 years ago, but especially until now,
mm,
every family here had a symbiotic relationship with their family kimchi
mm.
because there was a family recipe
Right,
that was passed down and or you'd get it from grandma or great grandma.
right.
She'd make it, for everybody and send it to them. But over the years, fewer and fewer people know how to make it or even try, and they go buy it instead. But think about that. You know, for probably 500, how many generations?
Right.
I mean, kimchi changed a lot after the Portuguese brought the chilies here, right?
Mm,
And it got red, but it was these ferments going on in the same area of Korea, maybe at the same house, the same family plot, you know, for a long time,
right.
many multiple generations. And they didn't eat a whole lot of meat either,
Mm,
you know. It was a lot of vegetables and rice
yeah.
and just in the last, 20 years or so, that line has just been cut, you
Mm,
know, and that symbiotic relationship that they had with their gut and this family kimchi that they, I mean, literally evolved with over some generations was lost. And then eating so much meat on top of that, and your grandfather, your great grandfather, your great great grandfather always had this other bacteria from the
mm,
ferment, these other enzymes in their stomach to help and digestive tract to help digest these things.
right.
And now you take that all away, and then change the diet entirely or increase the amount of meat so much. And then you throw in, MSG, Dashida, and you throw in a bunch of other stuff. And no wonder, no wonder that there's issues with stomach and colon cancer.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good, man. It sounds
Yeah.
kind of scary. Um,
Yeah.
my wife keeps telling me, like, when I met her, she blames her meat cravings right now all on me. Because up until the point when I met her, around 2006, like 14 years ago, she said she never used to eat meat. Like, she'd have meat occasionally with her family, but her diet consisted mainly out of vegetables, green stuff,
Mm.
doenjang jjigae, stuff like that. Um, and then I came along and I started, eating like pizza and chicken wings and stuff like that, and she got into it. And now she enjoys eating, like she'll have occasional pizza. But sometimes,
Mm.
like in the middle of the night, in the evening, I see her, she'll pull out a jar of her mom's made kimchi and some green leaves and just start stuffing herself with rice and kimchi, like really simple, stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Man,
that's
and that
home for her.
those old like the mountain, if you go to those 5 day markets or to
Mm,
countryside and find that real like mountain doenjang, like a fermented soybean paste,
yeah, yeah.
and then you've got something like the bomdong namu, the winter, it's like a cabbage that grows flat on the ground, kind of in a
Okay.
shape like a flower.
Mm.
I got this amazing doenjang one year
Mm.
from my friend's parents with an organic farm, and they're participating at the Seoul Marché or farmers market.
Mm-hmm.
This doenjang was balanced so well
Mm.
and not real salty, and somebody had given me all these greens. It's like a cabbage green. It's called bomdong here in Korea. I don't even know a Western name for this stuff, but it's like a winter cabbage that grows flat on the ground
Okay.
rather than balling up.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, how am I going to eat all this stuff? And I sat down with that doenjang, and next thing I knew, all of the bomdong was gone. Like I'm talking like half a garbage bag full of greens because you just dip with that doenjang
Yeah.
and just a little bit with each bite, and oh man, it's so good,
Yeah.
so good. I gotta say though, you have to spend some time with Korean food. I think most people have to spend some time with Korean food before they can really get into some of those flavors. uh I tried taking a lot of these things back to the States that I fell in love with here,
Mm.
and sharing with friends.
Yeah.
And I forgot that they didn't have that first year that I had here of
Right.
just kind of trying things slowly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was the second year that I went nuts. It was like, give me that countryside Jonggukjang or Doenjang or
Yeah.
whatever, you know. They didn't have that trial, you know, one year of just testing things out. So
Right.
when I brought Doenjang Gook into the house, they're like, "Oh, take that outside," you know. And some of the kimchi, you know, I'll put raw oysters or baby octopus into my
Mhm.
kimchi
Yeah.
and let it ferment, you know,
Right.
for a whole month. And they just think I'm crazy, but that is, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised a lot of people don't like Jeonggukjang. A lot of Koreans scoff at it, saying that it smells bad and stuff. It's like one of my favorite things. Actually, there is a recipe that my mom used to cook. Um, and interesting enough, CMD here in the chat, he's from Poland apparently. I wonder if it's not my cousin, by the way. but in the Polish cuisine, there is a soup that's made of a pea or some kind of bean. I don't know, and it has a very similar to smell to Jeonggukjang. So
Wow.
during my 2000, when was I? My first uni year, 2010, I think. I was walking past a restaurant. That was the first time I was introduced to Jeonggukjang in 2010, and I could
Yeah.
smell. I'm like, what is that? It smells like home. It smells like my mom's cooking. And
No way.
my wife's like, oh,
Must have
this
been
is
fermented.
yeah, that's what it was. A restaurant. It was a Jeonggukjang restaurant. I was like, let's go. She was so surprised. She was like, what? You're gonna eat that stuff? I'm like, yeah, man, it's the best.
The one in Poland must be fermented. I'm not familiar. I don't know. I have to
I don't
look
know.
that up.
It's no, I don't think it's fermented.
Huh.
It's just a bean and just boil it up. I don't know. I don't know the recipe, but it is a regular bean. I think it's not fermented. The only thing
Okay.
that
Okay.
the Polish cuisine ferments is pickles and cabbage, as far as I know. Everything else is,
Sure.
it's mixed with either pickles or cabbage. I guess you pickle like, onions,
Hmm.
and just kind of jar them up for the winter and stuff. Onions and some other veggies.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I
Wow.
I
That's
picked
cool.
up. Oh, one quick question. Like, I'm having a hard time finding, the small cucumbers in Korea.
Hmm.
Yeah. They sell them at Lotte Mart because when I just jarred up made a jar of cucumbers for pickling just the other day, and I've made them once before. I found some dill, so I've got my mom's recipe. Man, last time I made them, they were amazing. But these suckers are expensive. They cost about 3,951 for 9 of them at Lotte Mart. I'm like, what?
Okay. Well, when did you buy them? How long ago was it?
Like 3 days ago.
Okay.
Mm.
Well, they actually were a whole lot more expensive about a month and a half ago
Really?
because of all the rain. But things are doing better now.
So this is actually reasonable.
Yeah, especially at a Lotte Mart. If you just go find your big market, your big
Uh-huh.
warehouse market. There's one in every city here.
Mm.
Even smaller rural towns still have a big warehouse market, like a Nongsusanmu.
I think where I
Um,
know where one is here in Ulsan, yeah.
and then not only that, you can't just go once and expect to get a good deal. You got to
Mm.
go and make sure they see you there
Right.
multiple times, because as soon as they know that you're going to be a regular customer,
Yeah.
then you're going to get better deals.
Right.
But if they think it's a one-off,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah, sure.
they might just double that price when they quote it, because there's no price tags on anything over there. You just got to ask them.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a
But
good
I've
tip
seen-
though, man. Yeah.
I've seen giant bags of those smaller cucumbers that are the curved smaller cucumbers. That's what you're talking about?
Well, these
You're talking
ones
about
were
the short,
straight, but
fat
I assume
ones.
like anything shorter than the massive long ones that Koreans sell here mainly in stores.
I've seen huge bags of them for $5.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
See, that's what I would love to find, man. And
It's
then-
not It's not highly prized here. It's kind of like a leftover.
Yeah, nobody really eats it. That's why it's like, I thought that's why it's hard to find, because most people go for the long ones and do with them whatever they do with them.
And the darker green ones are more firm here too, and they often cost twice as much than the lighter green, softer ones.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you want a good crisp pickle, those dark green ones are awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is.
Go to that market and make friends.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm gonna have to do.
I exchange Chuseok gifts and Solal gifts with my market friends, man. They're my people. I know how many kids they all have and what's going on, and I've got 12, 13-year relationships with my fish ladies and my poultry guy, and oh goodness, butcher shops and yada yada yada. Love it.
Nice. Wish I had the time to go out and shop like that, man. I'm just home and work. That's all.
Sorry to hear that.
All right. Well, we're coming on the 1 hour mark.
Okay.
Even though we started late. We started late because of stuff being dropped onto my lap last minute. So yeah. Ryan, any last words of wisdom to share with the general public here?
Every single thing that you grow with care will taste better than anything you can buy in a supermarket. Period. Your herbs will be stronger. Carrots more flavorful. Everything just tastes better because you're growing it for flavor rather than for marketability, shelf life, all these other things that you really don't care about.
Right.
It's just we've forgotten over the years what things can taste like.
Yeah. And that's why probably a lot of older folks here around me, like we live in a 3-story building, and you see rooftop gardens right across from us. And it's usually the older folks, like 60s, 70s, man, they're farming on their rooftop gardens.
Yeah. Also, Korean folks can't sit still.
No, yeah, that's another thing. That's my parents-in-law.
They gotta stay busy. They gotta do work, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess that's changing too.
Slowly. Yeah. All right, man.
Thanks nice again. Talking with you, Jack.
Yeah, likewise.
It's way past this farmer's usual bedtime, but this has been fun.
Well, thanks for sticking along and agreeing to come on the podcast here, man. Much appreciated. A lot of good information. Very interesting chat, man.
Sure thing. Sorry I couldn't answer all those questions folks had.
I think you answered most of them, and very well. So, yeah. Thanks again, Ryan.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Ryan's gone. Thank you very much for coming on. And so that brings us to the end of our podcast, pretty much. If you are new here, if this is your first time visiting us, then make sure to rewind, go to the beginning, and watch the podcast on farming in South Korea. There's a lot of good information Ryan shared with us on different methods of how to farm, how to create your own farms and rooftop farms, or how to grow better plants and vegetables, how to even start a market. If you have any questions, you can contact him. I believe I posted most of his info underneath the video. I think his Facebook page is Barefoot Gardening, I believe. It's again listed in there. So check that out. If you have any questions, he'll be happy to answer them, as he said himself. And yeah, so if you're new to the podcast, make sure to hit the like button. Remember to hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit it twice or 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Subscribe to the Living Korea channel. And that's gonna be it for today, the 19th of October. I look forward to seeing you next week, and stay tuned. Come back for more videos coming up on the regular upload on the Living Korea channel. Yep. Have a good night. Peace.